News when you want it with Bloomberg News Now. I'm Nathan Hager.
And I'm Karen Moskow.
Karen, we begin this morning with the passing of a civil rights icon. The Reverend Jesse Jackson has died at the age of 84. Bloomberg's Alexis Christoforous joins us with more. Good morning, Alexis.
Good morning. The famed civil rights leader who marched alongside Martin Luther King Jr. and later ran for president twice died peacefully this morning, surrounded by his loved ones, according to his family. A cause of death was not immediately given. Jackson revealed he had Parkinson's in 2017 and had been hospitalized since November after being diagnosed with a degenerative condition. Jackson's activism spanned decades, including 2 runs for the Democratic presidential nomination in 1984 and 88. In 2000, President Clinton awarded Jackson the country's highest honor, the Presidential Medal of Freedom, citing his decades of work to make the world a better place. Jesse Jackson is survived by his 6 children and his wife of 60 years. In New York, Alexis Christoforous, Bloomberg Radio.
All right, Alexis, thank you. We now turn to a couple of high-profile talks in Geneva. The U.S. and Iran are set to meet for a second round of nuclear talks as they seek to avoid renewed conflict in the Middle East. On Air Force One, President Trump said he will be following the talks closely.
So I'll be involved in those talks indirectly, and they'll be very important. We'll see what can happen. I mean, it's been typically, Iran's a very tough negotiator. I think they want to make a deal. I don't think they want the consequences of not making a deal. They want to make a deal.
And along with President Trump, Secretary of State Marco Rubio says he's hopeful Tehran and Washington broker an agreement. Rubio spoke with Bloomberg News editor-in-chief John Micklethwaite on the sidelines of the Munich Security Conference.
I think it's pretty clear that Iran will never be allowed to have a nuclear weapon, that poses a threat, not just to the United States, to Europe, to world security, and to the region. There's no doubt about it. The second is we obviously want to have forces in the region because Iran has shown the willingness and the capability to lash and strike out at the United States presence in the region. You know, we have bases because of our alliances in the region, and Iran has shown in the past that they're willing to attack us and or threaten our bases. So we have to have sufficient firepower in the region to ensure that they don't make a mistake and come after us and trigger something larger.
Secretary of State Marco Rubio speaking with Bloomberg editor-in-chief John Micklethwaite. Iranian officials have expressed willingness to discuss their nuclear enrichment activities, but they've tied any concessions to the potential easing of U.S. sanctions.
Well, Nathan, President Trump is reaping high praise on Vice President J.D. Vance and Secretary of State Marco Rubio, but fell short of saying if he would support either one of them to lead the Republican presidential ticket in the 2028 election.
Something I don't have to worry about now. I've got 3 years to go, so it's something I don't have to worry. JD's fantastic and Marco's, they're both fantastic.
President Trump made the comments to reporters on board Air Force One.
And as we approach the 4th anniversary of Russia's full-scale invasion of Ukraine, Karen, there will also be U.S. brokered talks between Ukrainian and Russian officials in Geneva. Bloomberg's Hugo Miller has the latest from Switzerland.
It's going to be up to whether the lead U.S. envoys, Steve Witkoff and Jared Kushner, can really kind of bring the sides together, knock some heads together. They've also brought their own idea of a U.S. Free economic zone, but that's interesting, and that's one thing that both the Russians and the Ukrainians agree on. They're both rather cool on the idea of a kind of neutral, free economic zone. So there's really going to be a full day, perhaps 2 days of discussions here in Geneva. But no one is too optimistic that a lot of headway is going to get made.
Bloomberg's Hugo Miller says the intensity of military strikes has risen sharply on both sides this month, despite U.S. efforts to end the war.
Well, back here in the nation's capital, Nathan, the Department of Homeland Security is still shut down amid a congressional funding impasse. According to an aide to Senate Minority Leader Chuck Schumer, the Democrats have sent a counteroffer on limits they're demanding on immigration enforcement activities to the Republicans in the White House. The lapse in funding could last for weeks with Congress on a recess.
And there's yet more fallout from the Jeffrey Epstein files, Karen. Billionaire Tom Pritzker says he is stepping down as executive chairman of Hyatt Hotels, citing his association with the disgraced financier. In a news release, Pritzker says he exercised terrible judgment in maintaining contact with Epstein and Ghislaine Maxwell. He says there's no excuse for failing to distance himself sooner. Meanwhile, Republican Congressman Thomas Massie is taking aim at Attorney General Pam Bondi for the Justice Department's handling of the files.
Ultimately, it's her who is responsible for the document production, according to our law. The Attorney General, it's not Todd Blanche, it's not the people below them. You can assign tasks to people, but you can't assign your responsibility.
Republican Thomas Massie appeared on ABC's This Week, heard Sundays on Bloomberg Radio. The latest tranche of Justice Department documents, as well as a cache of emails from Epstein's Yahoo account, show he also worked behind the scenes at the World Economic Forum to help his friends score accommodations and meetings with billionaires and government officials at the event. The DOJ files include messages between Epstein and World Economic Forum President Borja Brenda. Brenda says he had been completely unaware of Epstein's criminal activities.
And that's news when you want it with Bloomberg News Now. I'm Karen Moskow.
I'm Nathan Hager, and this is Bloomberg.